Mezco 112 Fantastic Four box set.
It is done.
There's been 16 assassination attempts in my life.
Mom, can you turn off that beeping? It's coming from... Wait, that's not coming from downstairs. It's coming from inside a toy. A toy that millions of kids slept next to every night in the 1970s. And if you think that's weird, this action figure could literally change his personality just by spinning a wheel in his brain. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you 25 action figures that came from your favorite television shows. But here's what nobody tells you. They were psychological experiments that somehow ended up in children's bedrooms. Most of these are banned now. Some are worth thousands, and one of them, well, let's just say if you owned it, you probably still remember exactly where you hid it. But first, let me show you why this space crew from Star Trek looked like they'd been beamed down wrong. 1. Star Trek figures, 1970s.
Attack, sir. Then message terminates.
Verified, Captain.
Back in the mid-70s, Mego gave us Star Trek figures. They looked like they'd been beamed down wrong. Captain Kirk had this weird yellow shirt. It felt like cheap plastic. His face looked more like a confused dad than a space captain. Spock's ears were so pointy they could poke holes in your other toys. I remember unwrapping my Kirk figure on Christmas morning. The plastic smell hit me right away. His hair felt like tiny plastic grass. The coolest part was the bridge playset. It had buttons that made beeping sounds. Just like the television show, my friends and I would spend hours making up adventures. "Beam me up, Scotty," we'd yell, even though Scotty never actually said that on television. The figure's arms moved like robots. Their legs were so stiff they could barely sit in the captain's chair. But we didn't care. We were exploring strange new worlds in our living room. 1 plastic adventure at a time. 2. The Incredible Hulk figure, 1978. The Incredible Hulk figure was supposed to be scary, but he just looked sad. This big green guy with purple shorts that were painted on. Not real fabric. When you pressed his back, his chest would puff out. Like he was taking a deep breath, the paint on his muscles would chip off after a few days of play. It left weird pink spots that made him look sick instead of strong.
This is the Hulk.
I got mine from a garage sale for 50 cents. The lady said her son was too old for toys now. Hulk's face had this permanent frown, like he was upset about being made of plastic. His hands were huge, bigger than my dad's. They felt rubbery and weird. The best part was making him fight my other action figures. He always won because he was twice their size. My mom hated when I made Hulk smash things around the house. "Don't make me angry," I'd say in my deepest voice. Copying the television show. "You wouldn't like me when I'm angry." 3. Welcome back, Cotter Figures, 1977.
It should look like it's being blown by unseen winds.
Welcome back! Cotter action figures were probably the weirdest idea ever. Who wants to play with tiny high school students? But there they were. Vinny, Barbarino, Horshack.
Storks don't bring babies no more. They used to years ago.
And the whole gang. Standing about 8 inches tall in their 70s clothes, Barbarino's hair was this weird brown plastic. It looked like a helmet. Horshack had that goofy smile painted on his face forever. I remember my cousin got the whole set for his birthday. We'd set up the classroom playset, make them say their famous lines, "Ooh, ooh, Mr. Cotter," in Horshack's squeaky voice.
Yeah, Mr. Cotter, I did what I was supposed to do. But then it was too late to do homework after she left.
The figures smelled like new plastic and hairspray. Their clothes were painted on, so they always looked the same. We tried to make them do homework, but their hands couldn't hold the tiny pencils that came with the set. After a week, we used them for army battles instead. Even Barbarino looked tough when he was fighting aliens in our backyard 4. Mego Superheroes, 1972.
Here comes the Spider-Man. Sir, if you don't come out, we're breaking down this door.
Mego's Batman and Spider-Man were our first real superhero. They were amazing. Batman's cape was made of real fabric. It swished when he moved. Spider-Man's costume was tight-fitting cloth. It showed his muscles underneath. Both figures had this serious look on their faces, like they were ready to fight crime in your bedroom. Batman's utility belt actually had tiny pouches you could open. Inside, there were microscopic tools. They got lost immediately. Spider-Man could bend into crazy positions because of his stretchy costume. I remember the fabric smell, like new clothes mixed with plastic. Their hands could grip things perfectly. My Spider-Man held onto my bedroom curtains for months, looking like he was climbing up the wall. Batman always stood guard on my dresser, watching over my other toys. When friends came over, these were the first figures I'd show off. They felt special, like real superheroes had shrunk down just for us. 5. Laverne and Shirley figures, late 70s.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Laverne and Shirley action figures were just plain weird. Two ladies from a television show about working in a brewery. They became 8-inch dolls with painted-on waitress uniform. Laverne had that big L on her shirt. Shirley looked way too sweet to be real. Their hair was hard plastic that never moved, styled in perfect 50s curls that felt sharp when you touched them. My sister got them for Christmas.
The trumpet player. No, he's the best kisser.
I secretly played with them when she wasn't around. They came with tiny milk bottles and burger props, too small for their stiff fingers. The weirdest part was their faces. They had these big painted smiles that never changed, even when you put them in dangerous situations. I used to set up adventures where Laverne and Shirley had to escape from my army men. Their uniforms never got dirty. Their hair never got messed up. They always looked ready for work at the brewery. No matter what adventures we put them through in our living room world. 6. Chips, Ponch and John, 1979. Chips figures came with motorcycle cop uniforms. Serious expressions that said, "I'm here to write you a ticket." Ponch had his mustache painted on. John looked like he'd never smiled in his life. Their police uniforms were made of this weird, shiny fabric. It felt like plastic bags. The helmets were too big. They always fell off during motorcycle chases. The motorcycles were the best part. They had working wheels, made a clicking sound when you rolled them fast. I remember the rubber tires leaving black marks on our kitchen floor. Mom was not happy about that. The figures could sit on the bikes, but they looked uncomfortable, like they were learning to ride for the first time. My friend Tommy and I would set up traffic stops in his driveway, using toy cars as speeders. "Pull over!" we'd yell, making Ponch chase after Hot Wheels cars. The uniforms would get dusty from outdoor play, but we'd just brush them off and keep going. These guys were always ready to protect and serve our neighborhood adventures. 7. Evel Knievel Stunt Cycle, 1973.
Bear my name, Evil Knievel.
It is done. If it is impossible...
The Evel Knievel Stunt Cycle wasn't just a toy, it was a tiny rocket with wheels. You'd crank up the launcher, put Evel on his red, white, and blue motorcycle, watch him zoom across the room like he was trying to jump the Grand Canyon. The launcher made this awesome winding sound. Click, click, click. That meant serious stunts were about to happen. Evel himself was fearless. With his white jumpsuit and that confident smile painted on his face, his helmet never fell off, no matter how many crashes he survived. I remember the first time I launched him, he flew so fast he hit the wall and bounced back toward me. The motorcycle was tough enough to survive any crash. Evel always stayed in the saddle. My whole family would gather around to watch the stunts. We'd set up ramps using books, see how far he could fly. The best crashes were when he'd flip through the air, land upside down, still smiling like it was all part of the show. 8. Fantastic Four, 1978.
When we get to the bank.
We will break in and take the money ourselves. Huh?
The Fantastic Four were Marvel's first family. Their figures proved that superpowers ran in families. Mr. Fantastic could stretch his arms and legs into crazy positions. The Thing was orange and rocky.
Cool, the new Fantastic Four.
Don't forget the change.
Feeling bumpy and tough under your fingers. The Human Torch looked ready to burst into flames. Invisible Woman was there, even though you could see her perfectly. Mr. Fantastic's stretchy arms were made of bendable material. It eventually cracked after too much use. The Thing was the heaviest figure ever, built like a real rock monster. Their uniforms were blue, with the number 4 proudly displayed on their chests. I remember the rubber smell from Mr. Fantastic's stretchy parts, the solid weight of the Thing in my hand. We'd create cosmic adventures, where they fought alien threats and saved the world. Reed Richards looked smart and scientific. Ben Grimm just looked ready to clobber something. Sue Storm was one of the few female superheroes available, making her extra special in our collection. 9. MASH Figures, 1982.
By Jove, I believe I hear Charlie.
MASH figures were serious business. Army doctors and nurses in their green uniforms, ready to save lives in your living room. Hawkeye had his serious doctor face. Hot lips, looked stern and professional. Their medical equipment was tiny and detailed. Little stretchers, medical bags, even a tiny helicopter that barely flew. These figures felt different from other toys. They were about real people doing important work. Not just superheroes or cartoon characters. The uniforms were made of real fabric. It felt rough, like actual army clothes. I remember setting up the medical tent in my bedroom, using sheets and pillows to make it look real. The figures could hold the tiny medical tools. We'd play out Rescue Mission, where they saved other action figures. My dad, who was a real doctor, would sometimes watch, tell us what the medical equipment was really for. These toys made us feel like we were part of something important, helping people just like the characters on television. 10. Kenner $6 Million Man, 1975.
Steve Austin, the $6 Million Man, and the new bionic transporter.
The $6 Million Man figure was amazing, because he had actual bionic powers. Well, sort of. His right arm made a clicking sound when you lifted it, just like on television. His eye had a tiny lens you could look through, making everything appear bigger and stranger. Steve Austin stood ready for action in his red tracksuit, looking serious and tough. The coolest part was rolling back the skin on his arm to see his bionic parts underneath. It was like having a real cyborg in your toy box. The figure came with a computer briefcase full of tiny spy gadgets that got lost within hours. I'd spend time looking through his bionic eye, at bugs, coins, and my sister's dolls. Everything looked weird and magnified. His grip was strong enough to hold real objects. His legs bent just right for action poses. We can rebuild him, I'd say, in my deepest voice. Copying the television show's opening. We have the technology. This figure made every other toy seem ordinary and non-bionic. 11. The Rookies Police Set, 1975. The Rookies were young cops learning the job. Their figures looked just as nervous as they did on television. They wore police uniforms that were too clean and new-looking, like they'd never been in a real fight. Each figure had a different worried expression, like they weren't sure they were ready to be police officers yet. The set came with police equipment, tiny and detailed, handcuffs, radios, and notebooks. The notebooks opened, but had no writing inside. These figures felt different from superhero toys, because they were supposed to be regular people doing a dangerous job. Their uniforms were made of fabric that felt rough and official. I'd create training scenarios, where they had to learn how to be brave cops. They always seemed to need help from my other action figures, which made them more human and relatable. The best adventures were when they finally got confident enough to solve crimes on their own, proving they really could be good police officers. 12. Happy Days figures, 1976.
Falcon turf. Turf?
Happy Days figures brought the coolest guy in the 50s right into your bedroom. The Fonz stood there in his leather jacket and jeans, with his hair slicked back perfectly. He came with a tiny comb, a motorcycle that was almost too small for him to ride. Richie looked like the perfect good boy. Potsy just looked confused all the time. The Fonz's leather jacket was made of real fake leather. It felt smooth and tough. His thumbs were positioned just right for giving his famous thumbs up. Aye, we'd say, trying to sound as cool as him. The motorcycle made a tiny clicking sound when you rolled it. The Fonz could sit on it if you balanced him just right. We'd set up Arnold's drive-in using cardboard, make the characters hang out, eating invisible hamburgers and listening to rock and roll. The Fonz was always the coolest figure in any group. Even my superhero figures seemed to respect him. He had that special power of being effortlessly awesome. 13. The Love Boat Crew, 1981.
The best friend of the sexy one? That's okay.
The Love Boat figures were dressed for a permanent vacation. Captain Steubing wore his white uniform, with tiny gold buttons. Julie, the cruise director, had her hair styled perfectly for welcoming passengers. Isaac, the bartender, came with a tiny cocktail shaker. It was too small for his hands to hold properly. These figures felt fancy and clean, like they'd just stepped off a real cruise ship. Their clothes were made of white fabric. It stayed bright no matter how much you played with them. The ship playset was huge. It had multiple decks, just like on television. Setting it up took forever, but it was worth it. We'd create passenger adventures and romantic stories. Though at 8 years old, Romance mostly meant holding hands. The figures always looked happy and professional, ready to make sure everyone had a good time on their cruise. They smelled like new plastic, mixed with that clean, soapy smell that reminded you of vacation hotels. 14. Starsky and Hutch figures, 1976. Starsky and Hutch were the coolest cops ever. Their figures proved it. Starsky had his cardigan sweater and blonde hair. Hutch looked tough in his leather jacket. They came with tiny guns that disappeared immediately.
You know, they put door handles, door cards, wing mirrors with mirrors on.
A red car with white stripes, too small for both of them to fit inside. The figures felt serious and grown-up, like real detectives. Their faces were painted with expressions. That said, they meant business. I remember the plastic smell when I first opened the package. Mixed with that new car smell from the toy vehicle, we'd set up crime scenes, using other toys as bad guys and witnesses. The car's doors actually opened! It rolled smoothly across our hardwood floors! Do it! We'd yell, copying Starsky's famous line. Their hair was hard plastic that never moved. Even during high-speed chases through our living room, these guys made every other police toy seem like amateurs. 15. Partridge Family Doll, 1971. The Partridge Family Doll was supposed to be David Cassidy, but it looked more like someone's confused older brother. He had this weird fake hair. It felt like a shag carpet. His clothes were painted on. His face had this permanent smile. It was supposed to be charming, but it just looked creepy after a while. My neighbor girl had one. She'd make him sing songs by moving his mouth up and down. The doll came with a tiny guitar. He couldn't actually hold it because his fingers were too stiff. We'd set up concerts in her backyard, using cardboard boxes as the stage. The doll's hair would get full of grass and dirt, but it never looked any different. Because it was so fake, his shirt had flowers painted on it, they never faded, even after months of outdoor adventures. I think I love you, she'd sing in a high voice, making the doll dance around. He always fell over, because his bell-bottom pants made him top-heavy. But that just made our concerts more exciting. 16! Linda Carter Wonder Woman, 1977. Wonder Woman was the first female action figure. That actually looked strong and heroic. Her costume was real fabric with golden details. They sparkled in the light. The red, white, and blue outfit fit perfectly. Her long black hair felt soft and real. She came with a golden lasso that actually worked. You could tie it in tiny knots. Her face was painted to look determined and brave, not just pretty like other girl dolls. Wonder Woman could stand on her own, pose for action shots. My sister and I would create adventures, where she saved the world from my army men and monsters. The spinning motion from the television show was impossible to recreate, but we'd twist her around anyway. Pretend she was changing into her costume. Her boots were painted gold. They never scuffed. No matter how many adventures she went on, she was tough enough to handle any mission we could imagine. Beautiful enough to be a real princess from Paradise Island. 17. Emergency! Paramedic figures, 1977. With their paramedic uniforms and serious medical equipment, Roy and John looked professional and calm, like they could handle any emergency you could imagine. Their orange and white uniforms were detailed, with patches and pockets that looked real. The ambulance was the star of the set. It had opening doors, a stretcher that slid in and out, even tiny medical equipment inside. The figures could sit in the front seats. Drive to emergencies around our house, everything had that new plastic smell, mixed with the clean medical smell. That reminded you of going to the doctor. We'd create disaster scenarios using other toys, then call in Roy and John to save the day. Their faces were painted to look calm and competent, never panicked no matter how bad the emergency was. These figures taught us that helping people was the coolest job ever. We all wanted to be paramedics when we grew up. 18. J.J. Arms, 1976.
There's been 16 assassination attempts in my life.
Super Detective J.J. Arms.
J.J. Arms was the most unusual action figure ever. A detective with hook hands instead of regular hands. Based on a real detective who lost his hands in an accident, the figure was both fascinating and a little scary. His hooks could actually grab things, making him different from every other action figure. The hooks were silver and shiny, moving up and down with a clicking sound. His three-piece suit made him look professional and important.
Over $50 million to the lower valley.
like a real detective. I remember being amazed that someone could be a detective. Even without regular hands, the figure came with detective equipment. That worked with his hook hand, magnifying glasses, notebooks, and even a gun that he could hold perfectly. Playing with J.J. Arms taught us that being different didn't mean you couldn't be a hero. His confident expression showed that he was proud of who he was. This figure was educational and exciting at the same time, proving that real heroes come in all different forms. 19. Land of the Lost Figures. 1975. Land of the Lost Figures were perfect for creating prehistoric adventures. The Marshall family looked ready to survive. In a world full of dinosaurs and strange creatures, their safari outfits were detailed. With pockets and equipment for exploring dangerous places, the dinosaur figures were the real stars. They had movable parts, looked scary enough to be dangerous. The Sleestack figures were creepy, with their big eyes and green skin, making perfect villains for our adventures. Everything had that earthy, prehistoric smell. That made you think of jungles and danger. We'd build Lost City sets using blocks and toys, creating temples and caves for the family to explore. The figures felt sturdy enough. To survive dinosaur attacks and cave explorations, Will Robinson looked brave despite being just a kid. Holly was tough enough to handle any adventure. These toys made us feel like real explorers, ready to face unknown dangers in mysterious lands. 20. Gilligan's Island playset, 1974. The Gilligan's Island playset was like having your own deserted island in a box. It came with tiny palm trees, a bamboo hut, figures of the whole gang. Gilligan's red shirt was painted on. His white hat always looked too big for his head. The skipper was round and jolly. Ginger looked fancy even though she was supposed to be stuck on an island. Setting up the island was half the fun. The palm trees had to be pushed into little holes. The hut needed to be assembled just right. Everything smelled like new plastic, mixed with that weird toy paint smell. The figures were smaller than regular action figures, so they felt delicate in your hands. I'd spend hours creating rescue attempts. Using toy boats and helicopters from other sets, the coconuts were tiny brown dots. They got lost in the carpet immediately, but the best part was making up new episodes where they almost got rescued. Then something would go wrong at the last minute, just like on television. 21. Space Academy figures, 1977. Space Academy figures were cadets training to explore the galaxy. They wore futuristic uniforms. With space helmets that actually came off, each figure had that clean, scientific look. That said, they were serious about space exploration, not just playing around. The space-based playset was incredible. It had blinking lights, computer sounds, multiple levels for training exercises. The figures felt modern and high-tech, like they were from the real future. Their uniforms were silver and blue, looking official and important. I remember the electronic beeping sounds from the base, how the lights would flash in patterns like a real computer. We'd create training missions, where the cadets had to prove they were ready for space travel. The helmets were clear plastic. That made their faces look serious and professional. These figures made space seem like a real career choice, not just science fiction. They inspired us to study harder in school, so we could join Space Academy someday. 22. Fisher-Price Adventure People, 1975.
Presents
The Adventure People.
toys for your older kids. There's the Northwoods Trailblazer, ready for his adventure.
Adventure People were different from other action figures. They were smaller, simpler, somehow more real. The deep-sea diver, astronaut, and rescue workers. They looked like they had actual jobs to do. Their bright colors and simple designs made them perfect for young kids who wanted grown-up adventures. Each figure came with equipment that actually worked with their hands. The diver had an air tank and flippers. The astronaut had a space pack. The rescue worker had safety gear. They felt solid and durable, like they could survive any adventure you could imagine. I remember their clean, bright colors, how they fit perfectly in small hands. The vehicles that came with them were equally tough. Boats, helicopters, and rescue trucks. That rolled and floated and flew just like they should. These figures taught us that regular people could have exciting adventures too, not just superheroes and space travelers. 23. Moonraker Jaws, 1979. Jaws from Moonraker was the scariest action figure ever made. His metal teeth gleamed silver. His huge size made him tower over other figures. This wasn't the friendly kind of toy you cuddled with. Jaws was built to be the ultimate bad guy. His teeth were the main feature. They opened and closed with a clicking sound. That was both cool and creepy. The figure wore a black suit. That made him look formal and dangerous at the same time. I remember being both excited and nervous when playing with him. He was too scary to keep on the nightstand, but too cool to put away. His hands were large enough to grab other figures. His expression never changed from that menacing smile. We'd create spy adventures, where James Bond figures had to outwit this metal-mouthed monster. Jaws always made the best villain, because he looked like he could actually bite through anything, making every adventure feel more dangerous and exciting. 24. Big Jim, 1972. Big Jim was the ultimate adventure figure. Bigger, stronger, and more realistic than any other action figure. His muscular body felt solid and powerful, like a real athlete or soldier. The karate chop action in his right arm made a satisfying clicking sound when you pressed his back. Jim's hair was molded plastic. That looked like a real crew cut. His face had that determined expression of someone ready for action. He came with camping gear, sports equipment, adventure accessories that fit perfectly in his strong hand. I remember the substantial weight of the figure, how his joints moved smoothly into action poses. The camping tent actually worked for outdoor adventures. His backpack could hold tiny supplies. Big Jim made other action figures look small and weak by comparison. He was the kind of hero who could handle any situation, whether it was mountain climbing, deep-sea diving, or just playing sports in the backyard. 25. Pulsar, the Ultimate Man, 1976. Pulsar was the weirdest action figure ever created. He had transparent skin, glowing organs you could see and remove. His heart, lungs, and other body parts were visible through his clear chest panel. When you pumped his back, his heart would actually beat with a red glow. Opening up his chest was like performing surgery on a spaceman. The organs were squishy and weird feeling, making gross sounds when you squeezed them. Everything glowed in the dark, so Pulsar looked extra strange when the lights went out. I remember the satisfaction of putting his organs back, in the right places, watching his heart pump again. The transparent plastic had a weird smell, like medical equipment mixed with new toys. His muscular body was impressive, but the glowing guts were what made him special. Friends would come over just to see the figure with the beating heart. Pulsar made biology class seem exciting and gross at the same time. Thanks for watching our deep dive into the weirdest 70s action figures you never knew existed. From forgotten 1970s television show toys to bizarre 70s toys and rare television show action figures from the 70s, these unusual vintage action figures truly defined a strange, creative era. Whether you're into retro toys from the 70s, vintage collectible television show figures, or the most controversial 1970s action figures, there's always more to discover. Like, subscribe, and stick around. We've got more classic 70s television character toys and weird and rare 1970s toy lines coming soon!